This is Afternoon New Music on WKCR FM New York and WKCR HD1 89.9 FM. I'm your host, Bill Dougherty. I'm joined today by leading Romanian composer Ana-Maria Avram. She's joining me today in celebration of her upcoming concert with the Either Or Ensemble at Miller Theater this week on Tuesday, March 1st at 6 p.m., Thursday, March 3rd at 6 p.m., and her husband, Iancu Dumitrescu's portrait concert on Saturday, March 5th at 8 p.m. Ana-Maria has been active on the international new music scene with her Hyperion Ensemble, which she is a part of with her husband, and their deep involvement in a number of festivals, including the International Music Festival of Computer-Assisted Music, Musica Viva, the International Spectral Music Festival, and their own Spectrum 21. As self-proclaimed hyperspectralists, Iancu and Ana-Maria write music based on the radiant power of sound and its microcosmic complexity, all aspects of which are questioned, analyzed, and recomposed from a spectral perspective. So thank you, Ana-Maria, for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. And Iancu is really sad. He couldn't participate also, but rehearsals are really, really hard to assume. I mean, there are many hours of rehearsal, 3 different programs. It's not easy. I mean, the ensemble, they are really great guys. We found here such an openness and, creativity, which is, we worked with many ensembles, a part of Hyperion Ensemble, but this one is really great. I mean, we're very happy to cooperate with them.
And I know that Richard Carrick came all the way from Rwanda to...
It's extraordinary. We are very, very impressed by this enthusiasm and friendship they show us. David Shively was our guest in our last edition of our Spectral Music Festival, which was held only in Bucharest this November, and we discovered him like a very enthusiastic organizer and promoter, and also a great percussion player. So it's really, really good to have such friends here.
Mm-hmm. I just want to give a little bit, maybe I can plug the concerts a little bit later, but I want to give you a little bit background on Ana-Maria. She was born in 1961 in Bucharest, right? And did your studies in, you have a master's in composition studies?
Yes.
Why don't you go on? Why am I?
Until 18, I was 18, I was a concert pianist with a contest, international contest and so on, the race runner piano. Something very silly now for me because it's a hard work. Competition is not for musicians. Bartok said that competitions are not for musicians, are for horses. So when I decided I don't want to be a horse, I just make an announcement to my parents: from today I will train myself for composition and I'll be a composer. So period. This was.
That's right. It's
I
funny.
made studies of composition in the National Academy of Music, which was very good at the time. We had fantastic teachers. A really great generation of composers who were all born around the 30s, between the 30s and the 40s. So they were really great
Is
musicians
like
Vieru,
Stefan Niculescu there?
Anatol Vieru, Stefan Niculescu, Miriam Marbe, Tiberiu Aulach. So great names of the modernism of Romanian music in very difficult conditions, very tough conditions of the time. But they tried to remain creative, informed. They were actually the correspondent, they were as important as composer as Lutoslavski or Penderecki or people like that, but only living in Romania, they were less known because they very seldom get out of the country and so on. The conditions were so much different.
Right.
So we really had a good school of composition in the years, and this spectral school, which emerged in the 80s, it's also a result of they were not spectralists. Our teachers, but their way of teaching, their way of making us in the connection with the big music of the time, which was not obvious or other ways, make this new generation of the person born in the middle of the 40s and later to find this way of a new modernity in spectral music, which has nothing to do with this French spectral music.
So maybe first, before we dive into spectralism, we should just, people throw around the word spectral, and it has many different meanings.
Absolutely.
It was originally coined, I guess, by the French composer Hugues Dufour, maybe in an article in the 70s or something. He called, this music that was being written in France by Tristan Murail and Gerard Grisey, for example, as having the spectral element where they would take mathematical analysis of spectrograms of sounds, deconstruct them, and then recompose them, essentially.
Exactly.
Now, is that what you would say, like, that is spectralism for you, or is it something different? Is it a way of thinking?
It's an aspect, a way of an approach to spectralism.
Sure.
Actually, spectralism is more than a very specific current and a trend in music. Now because there is a perspective after 20, 30 years, we can have a perspective, and now we know that it's more than and different than only a trend, a very, very specific trend, but it's an attitude towards music. So it's a different way to think about the music in terms of sound, not of structure, of permutation and so on, as the elder music was like the dodecaphonic music and all the structuralist music, which was promoted by Boulez and the generation, late Boulez and so on. So the problem is, in the same time, and even a little bit former than the French spectralism, the Romanians of the Iancu's generation was already speaking about the spectrum and the irradiant force of the sound, having no idea about what the young French were doing.
And this
the
is
French
like
of their own generation,
70s.
Actually, because Grisey and Murail, we are friends with Murail, and we were the first, Hyperion Ensemble were the first who played his music in Romania in the 90s, at the beginning of the 90s, so we know very much about, and so they were parallel spectralist trend without knowing each other. And they remained such after the 90s. And even Chelsea, Iancu did nothing about Chelsea. There are many musicologists or musical critics or reviewers who said something about his music in connection with Chelsea, but it was no connection with Chelsea because he never.
Chelsea.
No, he didn't know Chelsea. He knew Chelsea very late. Also in the 90s, he met Chelsea sometimes in the 80s by chance. He was introduced to him at a concert by Horatiu Rădulescu, another Romanian spectralist who made a little bit the connection between French and Romanian spectralists, because he lived so many years in France. So to come back to the Romanian spectralists is so much different from the French, because French spectralism, actually, they make also a connection with elder structuralist music, actually orchestrating the timbre, taking an image of him by the means of spectrograms and so on, and many other things we know today, making an analysis of this timbre and then orchestrating this timbre with actually real sounds. This doesn't make this music more spectral than because the sources of the sound are not spectral at all, are just normal. And the structure, the approach to the music, to the musical structures is in consequence. Also, a traditional, in a classical way, traditional, a modernist approach, structuralist approach. So it's not such a big difference between Murail's music and, for example, Boulez's music. There's the same approach in musical structure. The Romanians were, in a way, more radical, I can say, and more courageous. Trying to build with the spectrum, trying to build with a spectral sound with those transitory sounds, which are multiphonics, which are harmonic sounds, overtones, and so on, all kind of fragile sounds, which to be put in music and to build a composition with those kind of sound, you need to revolutionize the structure of the music, because they can't fit in any structure of music, because you have to reiterate the music to be similar with itself in a way, But in which way? So you have to find a form. You have to find a way to put those sounds into music. So this is the principle of continuously transformation, the principle of transformation, which is opposite to the structuralist principle. That makes such a big difference.
From what I understand from reading a bit about your approach and Dumitrescu's approach, is that you use a phenomenological approach as a basis.
Yes, phenomenology. It's a method which was applied in musical interpretation by Sajuteli Bidake, whose pupil Iancu was, disciple he was for conducting, but he applied the phenomenology, the Husserlian phenomenology, to composition, which is quite different. It's the same thing. The discovery of the direction where music wants to go. That's why transformational. We both find that it's a way of making music. Of building music, of putting it into sound, is to transform it. So there are two things: how you build the music, which phenomenology helped a lot, and the possibility of transcending the sound. What is transcending the sound? It's not a mystical thing. It doesn't mean we go to God. Not at all. It just means that the sound itself began music. So you find the metaphor of sound. That sound is transformed into music. It's going into a space where it's not only the material thing, but the meaning of the thing. So that things can become limpid and they can really reach an artistic level.
What's interesting is that if you remove, I think part of the, I don't know if you would say it's a problem. I guess you probably would say it is a problem, but with the French spectral school is that, as you said, it's still formalist in a way. That it was still kind of very much tied down to a tradition of making forms that are not related to how we hear, but are rather related to mathematical models or chants, because they recorded a bell sound and that bell sound. But that doesn't...
Anyway, there is a model which is external to music itself.
Right, exactly. And so then how do you, in the context of molding sound and sound over time, how do you apply a phenomenological, how approach Husserlian?
You mean the process of composing, or?
Well, how is it? Yeah, how is it? Because
well,
maybe first, just for the listening audience, we should talk a little bit about Husserl's phenomenological approach. What are the kind of principles of it? It has to do with perception of objects and how we...
No, so what it has to do is to do with putting in parentheses the things which are
essential to the thing.
Essential, exactly, to the thing, and to arrive to this essence, which is and this process, it's of eliminating what is not important. It's epoche. It's putting into parentheses. I know they exist, but they exist. We just don't take care of them. So this is epoche. So we take care of a direction of things, of the way that in music. What is music actually? It's a sound which evolves. It's not the sound itself. Sound is not music. It could be music, but in what condition sound is music? Is becoming music in the phenomenological condition, because you can do phenomenology as Monsieur Jourdain was doing, grammar without knowing it, and good musicians always do that. All musicians always did that, also in the past. So it's the way, finding the direction where music itself needs to move. The sonic material. What did it mean? You are going from a seed, from a very fragile seed, a weak seed of sound, something a small inspiration, which can be like a small stone of sound. And what do you do with that? This is the problem. Where did this part of nothingness, something so teeny, wants to go to evolve into something? And this is what phenomenology as a method and as a process of knowledge can help us.
And so is it that then, so we talk about the seed, you have the seed of the idea or the seed of the sound.
It's not a seed of the idea, it's a seed of something, concreteness.
A sound.
It's a seed, yes.
So it's a sound idea.
Or could be an idea like...
Let's say it's a multiphonic on a bass clarinet,
exactly,
for example.
What are you doing? What
it's got a certain...
What follows next? next?
Yeah,
What
it's got a
follows
certain
next?
rattle. It's got a certain kind of uneasiness, and then I guess
And the possibility to evolve or not to evolve, or if you realize that it has no, it's a dead end. So then you have to oppose it something else.
And then do you think of it as in, so with phenomenology, you would talk about what are the essential elements of this and what are the non-essential elements of this, and do you do that with that sound? Do you say, well, what
yes,
is it?
I see.
What is it that makes
we
this?
see what makes sense. What are the latent possibilities of improvement in this, or improvement of evolution, of going beyond, of going further on, of this sound or of this idea or of this sonic model. I don't know, this small beginning, and that's why you need always to refer to the beginning, also in composition and also when you play. So when you teach to others how to enter into this music, so the beginning is very important, because the middle of the piece, every second of music, it's like a not only remembrance, but it's like an equation which includes everything from the beginning. That is so much more obvious in a transformational music, where everything has a not only logical but inherent, absolutely obliged.
Yeah, it's like this thing had to come after this.
Yes,
it is
exactly.
from this
yes,
original.
and if you are not, if a bad beginning will never go anyway.
And do you also apply principles of phenomenology to large-scale form?
Absolutely, it's a large scale and a small scale are connected. And Horatio was one of the first who just identified the unity of macro and microform, which are as organic as I mean. If it's a living music, there are macroform and microform comes from the same.
What interests me so much, speaking of Horatio, is, and as you say, that there's this spectralist movement going on in Paris in the 70s, and in conjunction, in parallel to, in Romania, similar ideas are kind of coming about, but in a different way.
Absolutely different way, and absolutely different roots.
Right, but treating sound for sound.
Exactly.
Maybe, let's
yes.
say. But even you could say
treating sound for music. No. Treated sound for music, not like a how can I say, collection of beautiful objects like Nachman music, which is very beautiful. I love it, but it's such a different approach. It has nothing either phenomenologic or spectralist, because it's just beautiful object put in place it's so much pointillistic and.
So what interests me is that in France, it's very clear to me, at least because I know the repertoire of the 20th century of France, it's very clear how it could evolve into that, how the way of thinking could evolve into it. And
sure, absolutely.
I think a lot of people don't know.
From Debussy to passing through Messiaen, it's absolutely clear. Yes.
It's one after the
and
other.
if you have Boulez doing the job, which he did so brilliantly, so you know exactly what the mixing of all that was going to.
So what is it in Romanian musical culture?
The roots can I say I'm much elder than much more ancestral than in French music. So this because
we're talking about
not only Byzantine folkloric, because you have a traditional music, very very old, one of the oldest, still remained in place from Europe. I mean, very very beautiful folklore, which is based in a very very important part by overtones and modes which are extracted from the natural resonance. Actually, Bartók, who made the first really good collection of folk music at the true level, he found that these scales which were extracted from the resonance mode, so they put in they call them Romanian mode 1 and 2. So this is the way he called
1 and
them.
2. I like that.
Yes, yes, because there are two. One has a they are a little bit different, but they both have an obvious connection with the natural resonance. because the fourth it's upper and the seventh is down. It's
okay,
yes.
microtonal.
Yes,
in that way.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but there are music with overtones and music for instruments with overtone and music for voice with overtones and so on. And then Byzantine music, which is also has this different sense of time. I mean, a time which is transformational is not a time of structure.
Right.
And then this was the two, how can I say, reference. Romanian spectralists were going in the past to discover a new form of modernity. Like, for example, Stravinsky was going to the, barbarian roots of an ancient Russia to find a way of modernity, and he did it, and he found a very brilliant way to do that. So this was the, how can I say, the explanation, which is partially true. To go into the life of the sound and to explore it. Then, because at the time there were not so much electronic materials like the Muraille or Bizet had in Paris.
Yeah,
and
they had a fully funded electronic music institute, IRCAM, in Paris.
Yes, exactly. So they did that because they could do it, of course, and they had those needs, which were obvious. But in Romania, you could have those needs, and it
doesn't matter.
So Iancu tried to approximate those electronic sounds with instrumental sources, so to find the way where instruments were sounding different than normal instruments are sounding, and this is a long approach to different techniques which were more or less unknown and very unorthodox, and techniques of playing. I mean, diagonal techniques, as he loved to call them, and he made like electronic music, but with instruments, with double basses, with prepared piano, and so on. And he called that, which in fact it is acousmatics. Which is acousmatics, a Greek term which comes from Pythagore and from Pythagore time, and which was a sect, an intellectual sect of the Gnostic sect of people who were philosophers, and they knew something very secret. And the newcomers who were accepted by the sect, they received those secrets over a curtain. So in that way, the secret was more tremendous, more strong, and so. But this is the form of acousmatic at the physical level, as well as acousmatic, which was called by Pierre Henry. It's also at a level of physical level. I mean, of course, the acousmatic at the Greeks has also a metaphoric sense. But Pierre Henry said that about the music which cannot be played with real sources on stage, but has to be played only on loudspeaker, because it's a mixture between different kind of sources which cannot be recomposed live. And so this was French acousmatic. Yeah. But for Iancu, the acousmatics, and for our school, for myself also, acousmatic doesn't mean nothing. It has nothing to do with that. So you can very well see the sources on the stage, and still the sources stay into the metaphor of sound, into alchemy of sound. So you see people doing something on stage, and the sound resulting, it's only the one on the stage, but you don't understand why they don't sound like they used to sound normally. I mean, the double bass doesn't sound like a double bass. The computer sound like something else. I mean, the electronic source also sounds like something else than an electronic source, and so on. So you see the sources, but you cannot identify their sound. This is the challenge.
Just reiterate, I'm joined today here by Romanian composer Ana-Maria Avram, who's also a conductor. I'm going to throw that in. And she's here to celebrate her upcoming concerts with Either or Ensemble. Her and her husband, Iancu Dumitrescu, coming all the way from Bucharest. And they have concerts this week at Miller Theater. That's Tuesday, March 1st at 6 p.m. is the first. That's kind of, it's called Precursors and Parallels, which showcase a number of groundbreaking composers whose works weave together the musical traditions of Romania, which we've been talking about here. This includes music by Bela Bartok, Georginescu, Ștefan Niculescu, and music by Ana and Iancu as well. On Thursday, March 3rd at 6 p.m., Either or Ensemble again will perform an all Ana-Maria Avram pop-up concert, including 2 world premieres, her Axis and Winds of the Desert. Now, Winds of the Desert is written in 2006, is that correct?
It's a version. I mean, the first version of Winds of the Desert was composed in 2006. It's another. It's a different. It's a music which has. It's like a class of composition, we can say.
I see. Okay, I was curious. I thought, wow, this is a long time coming for this piece.
No,
if it
the
was
first.
Written,
Yeah.
So it's second version. Okay,
yeah.
And then the culmination of the week's concerts at Miller Theater comes Saturday, March 5th at 8 p.m. with the portrait concert of Iancu Dumitrescu, again performed by the Either or Ensemble under the direction of Richard Carrick. This concert will feature a total of 7 world premieres.
Exactly, yes.
7.
Only work premieres.
Yeah,
there will be only
7, that is, of new works by Dumitrescu. So if you are anywhere near New York, I encourage you to listen to this music. Let us then... Do you want to start with Iancu or?
Well, it's up to you.
I think maybe we start with Iancu and then
okay,
finish
wonderful.
it off with you.
A piece of the last years, Le Silence d'Or. It's a piece for computer sounds and instruments live, and it's Hyperion Ensemble, Hyperion International, because now Hyperion is from years an international ensemble with gathering together musicians from Israel, UK, Germany, France, Romania, of course. Now we have some people from Hungary, so it's quite not easy to meet ourselves and to do music together.
And they all live in those respective places.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, okay,
yes,
wow.
Yes.
That's
it's a great challenge, but they are the best of the best. And we have some old friends and some newcomers, and it's always like that. So.
And this is also with the Talea Ensemble, is that correct?
This is a concert from the piece with Iancu's piece. It's from a festival of a spectral music festival in 2009. So it's Talea and Hyperion Ensemble, because we also invited them when they were they're still very young, but they were much or less unknown at the time. I think this 2008 or 2009.
Yeah, 2009 is what it says. And there's also computer sounds in here, it says.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
so
great. Le Silence d'Or is...
Le Silence d'Or.
And what does that mean?
The silence, it's the golden silence.
The goal of silence.
The golden silence.
I see. Okay, let's give that a listen. That was Iancu Dumitrescu's Les Silences d'Or, performed by the Hyperion International Ensemble and the Talea Ensemble in London in 2009, with Iancu conducting.
Exactly.
This is Afternoon New Music on WKCR FM New York and WKCR HD1 89.9 FM, and I'm your host, Bill Dougherty. I'm joined today by leading Romanian composer and conductor Ana-Maria Avram, who's joining me to celebrate her upcoming concerts with the Either Or Ensemble at the Miller Theater this week on Tuesday, March 1st at 6 p.m., Thursday, March 3rd at 6 p.m., and that's an all Annamaria concert, and Saturday, a composer's portrait of her husband, Iancu Dumitrescu. That's Saturday, March 5th at 8 p.m., all at Miller Theater. So Ana-Maria and I were just talking, and we were talking about Horacio Radulescu, who is a Romanian composer, the same generation as Iancu, you would say.
Yes,
right?
I was 2 years older than Iancu, but they were colleagues and they were mates in the same year of at the school. They were very, very good friends, and it was a long-running friendship. They rediscovered each other when Iancu came in the Occident in the end of the 70s. So they renewed their friendship, and they were friends until the death of Horacio.
And what's so interesting to me is the approach of both Iancu and Horacio is so the similar way of thinking. And I don't know if that's I know that Horacio had more of a kind of mystical, spiritual side, perhaps, than Iancu.
Well, expressed like spiritual, mystical. Yes, I mean the way he's talking about his scores, and the way he's defending the musical material. Yes, it's more mystical, but I think we have to look to the music itself.
Sure. So there is a problem. So I've done some research on Radulescu, as I was telling Ana-Maria in the break. He requires such specificity in his scores, and he kind of has a very idiosyncratic way of writing where it's difficult. If you just were to look at a Radulescu score, it's really kind of, you got to work very hard. You have to look at older pieces.
To understand how to approach, yes,
right,
sure.
and
this is absolutely normal. I mean, each composer who have a way, a sound in mind, a possibility, a different adventure in sound, has to discover his own way of scoring. And this way of scoring sometimes is more awkward, sometimes it's more easy, sometimes it's more intuitive, but it's a part of his vision about music which is unique when it is unique, and which cannot be transcribed into a normal writing. If it would be, I think writing of a score has so much to do with the music. It's figurating for some composers, for some of them who are using really new sounds and a new sound. Because there are also musics which were revolutionary and who used a traditional, an old system of notation, of course. But there are also music which cannot be notated in a traditional way.
And it poses then, and I totally agree, but it poses then a distinct problem for at least in my research of Radulescu's music and trying to get pieces of his performed in the future. There's a difficulty to obtain his scores, which is a totally different issue. But once you get a hold of his scores, you really have to. It's like you have to
make a hermeneutic of the.
Yes, you need to relearn.
Yes, exactly.
You really need to make a research of Radulescu's music in order to perform it. And sometimes the information of what the sound he wanted.
It's not obvious.
If you don't have a recording,
you cannot. Guess from the scoring what
right.
It has to talk. Yeah, because there are different. There are two attitudes in scoring, and the in betweens, which are infinities. The score can be a set of indication for what the player has to do for achieving a result in sounding, but with not at all any possibility and any apprehension of the result to come. and the other which are a figuration somehow, I mean, in another matter, of course, but a figuration somehow of the way to come. And I think those two attitudes are very much represented on extreme ways by Horatiu on one side and by Iancu Dumitrescu and myself by another side. I mean, the way of scoring is so much of falling into this extreme. I mean, for Horatiu, this unintuitive way, I mean, you cannot guess, as you said, how the piece will sound, but you have a full set of indication of what the player has to do, more complex or less complex, but it's a set of indication. And on the other side, a figuration of the sounding in some way, very intuitive, in Iancu's music, in my music, in such a way that, for example, musicians which are not literate musicians, as a musicians, I mean, they don't read score normally. Like, for example, Stephen O'Malley or Chris Cutler, which are coming from absolutely unacademic milieu, but they are extraordinary. They are genius in their way. That don't mean they are doing a non-intellectual music just because they don't read scores. They are very intellectual in the way of approaching music without reading scores. And those people can very easily, more or less easily read our scores and in a very intuitive way, because they said it's a very normal approach to music. So
and is that because you illustrate the sound itself and not?
Well,
the
I think
technique?
it's a lot of. I mean, it's a
like graphic.
It's
notation?
experience of conducting, an experience of working with people, and of making the scores in the most intuitive way as possible in order to achieve the result we want. This is and always thinking about the addresser. I mean, the one who has to play, and which is the easiest way to achieve the result, and not to bother the musician with things which can be less important. This is where phenomenology helps with the epoche. So
that's right. Going back to
try to eliminate
Husserl.
what is not so important to achieve your goals.
That's right. Okay. And so do you have a because there's kind of you would say an intuitive kind of look of the notation for performance, would you say that so in the future, when you're both long gone, 100 years from now,
I think it would be as complicated as for Horatiu's music to be reiterated, of course, because it's also depends how spiritually this world will be, because how they will understand about transcending the sound, about transforming the sound, things like that, which are absolutely independent of what we think today. So we don't know.
But also, when you have your music performed, typically you are there, right? And you
not always. And the experience, the most fantastic experience we had also with some Americans. I mean, the late string quartet, because the people are young, but the quartet doesn't exist anymore. But they were great together. The IO string quartet. I don't know if you.
I don't know them, but
if you heard them, they were from New York. I mean, they still are in New York. 4 brilliant young people. And they played our music from scores, and it sounded absolutely magnificent. I mean, it was perfect. Wow. And they were one of the most difficult musics for strings, which were very, very acousmatic and very only with the harmonic sound and so on, very complicated.
Great.
And we were afraid that it would be a catastrophe because they just had scores and nothing else, and the result was magnificent.
Well, as we say, the proof is in the pudding.
Exactly.
So could you talk a little bit about, so there's some wonderful videos on YouTube you can see of Ana-Maria conducting and performing as a singer, as she will on Thursday. She'll be singing, what's the name of the piece on Thursday?
It's Nouvelle Arche. It's a piece for voice. I don't write very much for voice.
Nouvelle Arche, yes.
Yes, I used to write more for voice when I was younger and more traditionally approaching music, traditionally in the sense of classically approaching music. But after that, I didn't use so much the voice. And it's Well, actually, voice is such a fantastic instrument. Only not to use it with a bel canto or in a classical way, which is such a teeny way of using voice. Such a transformational and charismatic instrument. And I conceived first, it was a solo voice piece, which is arche, and which is a transformational music going from different patterns of coming from different traditions, more imaginary, but some are real quoting of ancient music. And sometimes there are only syllables, which are sometimes coagulating into words with some mystical signification or some important signification, but just words. And then I made a treatment of a computer treatment, and it's a computer-assisted music. So the voice is treated in real time or pre-recorded a real-time treatment, and so it's the voice is transformed and it's acousmatized, if I can say, but you still recognize it's about voice.
And there's layers, many layers of
yes,
voice.
It's multiplicated.
Like
yes.
many, it almost sounds like there's choirs sometimes.
Like a symphony for voice.
It's fantastic. And have you had anyone else interpret this piece as a singer, or has it been you?
I had somebody interpreting the solo piece.
Yeah.
But actually, the recording, which was for one of the CDs of Edition Moderne, was also made by me because I couldn't have the singer available then. It was a Russian singer from Paris, and she was singing a lot of modern music, and she was very passionate. I don't know what she's doing now. But she was very interesting. She was singing the Berio Segvenza, the Cati Berberian's music, and second day she was singing Norma. And
Great.
Incredible,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
She was special.
And how was that, hearing another person do it? It seems like it's a very
well,
personal piece.
It's like hearing every day, doing other music of myself for different instruments. It has nothing.
Okay,
so
so you
special.
wouldn't say it's particularly personal because you are the performer, the
not
solo
at all.
voice.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Oh, so we haven't talked about you conducting and cueing the musicians. So an important part, this is where I was leading with the YouTube comment, is you can see Ana-Maria and Iancu conducting in these videos on YouTube, and it's really fantastic. It's very theatrical. It's big. It's expressive. It's like outwardly...
well, it's the way the music deserves and music needs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So
nothing. It's the way that we should do it in order to music to make it alive. But our music is still conducted by other conductors and still works.
So I'm curious how, because I've only seen excerpts of scores. How does the conductor? Because it looks like, at least from one of the videos I saw of Iancu, he's really cueing. He's cueing a lot. And
It's cueing a lot.
So
you have to.
So is it that, maybe could you just talk more about that? Is it that in the score it will say, wait for cue from conductor here, and then you do something? Or is it follow the gesture of the left hand? Or
the musicians have to look to the scores, but in the same time look for cueing, because the cueing are the music is made here and now. And this is another principle, phenomenological principle. Yeah. And the score has to be adapted to the acoustical condition, to the people around.
There's everything. A lot of flexibility.
So it's a lot of. Actually, they sound so much alike when you hear them from outside. So they seem a lot of intervention in the music, but the music is still so much obliged and so much written, I can say. But there is a degree of liberty which is assumed by the conductor, who has the perspective of the whole. I mean, the whole thing, which a musician on his place cannot have it. And it's not a music for clerks. I mean, you read the score and you play in 4/4, and this is, I mean, really the task of the conductor. It's really important. It's really creative, and sometimes it's really like a new creation in real time, a new composition in real time, following the coordinates of the score.
And this may be a selfish question of me or a line of thinking for me as a composer. I just think that a lot of composers really struggle with balancing freedom, because you want to have
we all do that.
You want to have You want the music to be alive. And if it's too prescribed, it sounds very sterile. But at the same time, you want it to sound like what you imagined,
yes. So you have to balance always this liberty, this freedom, and this and the precision. Exactly.
So I'm curious, like in
this
practice,
struggle, it's on the scores. I mean, in the way of scoring, in the way of conducting, in the way of. But you also have to be wise enough and to accept from musicians what they propose when they are into the limits of the score, not to kill them their spontaneity, and also what you have to know in this transformational music and in a phenomenological approach is that even a mistake, something which cannot be assumed by, for example, for the spectral French music, a mistake, it's a mistake, it's a mistake, it's a mistake.
They will edit it out of the recording.
It can shit everything.
Yes.
So it can make the music broke.
Right.
And in a transformational and phenomenological approach of music, a mistake can be transformed, struggling to it, giving it sense, and transforming it into a virtue, maybe not, but just extirpating the mistake and giving it viability, possibilities. So the mistakes can be recuperated in a way with a very much, I mean, with a spirit very open and very sharp in the same time, in a living, very ardent way of living the music Higadlung. So here and now. So you can really integrate some degrees of mistake, of course, not the degrees which are human, and because even the CD and the digital media, they're full of mistakes.
That's right.
And they are always approximated.
But these edges is sometimes what makes the thing most compelling, to see the edges of humanness, of humanity. It's
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what makes live performance so exciting. I mean, part of it is that it's rough. It makes it gives it power.
So
but
I think our CDs, there are 99%. There are many. There are 34 titles of CDs for now. There are 99% live recordings. I mean, from performance, from concerts.
So I thought it would be good if we round off.
We talk a lot.
Yeah, if we round off our time together
too much.
With
It's
piece,
too much talk.
with a piece by Ana-Maria. Which one did you want to do?
The last one, Metal Storm.
Metal Storm
for
ensemble and computer sounds.
Yes,
could you speak a bit about it?
It also is featuring Stephen O'Malley as a soloist. The guitar player. He's not only a drone musician. You will see. It's from live concerts in Berlin. And the piece will be replayed in a version in Philadelphia, because we have two other concerts in Philadelphia in the Mars building on the 7th and 8th of March at 8 o'clock, if somebody is around.
Yeah.
And we'll have our good friend, the composer, which we presented in America, in Europe, actually, when he was younger, Mario Diaz de Leon, who is a great composer. I think he also will a spectralist approach, and he will play his guitar in our music. We'll see what it will do.
Great. So I just want to again plug the concerts. This week there's 3 concerts at Miller Theater. The first one is on Tuesday, March 1st at 6 p.m. And that's with the Either Or Ensemble, and that one's called Precursors and Parallels. It's a pop-up concert which showcases a number of groundbreaking composers whose works weave together the musical traditions of Romania, including works by Bela Bartok, George Enescu, Ștefan Niculescu, and Ana-Maria and Iancu. Then, on Thursday, March 3rd at 6 p.m., the Either Or Ensemble will perform an all Ana-Maria Avram pop-up concert, including 2 world premieres. Then the culmination of this week's of concerts of Romanian music at Miller Theater comes on Saturday, March 5th at 8 p.m. with the portrait concert of Iancu Dumitrescu, again performed by the Either Or Ensemble, and this one will feature 7 world premieres. I want to thank again, Ana-Maria Avram, for joining me today.
Thank you for invited me.
Yeah, for this lively conversation. We've gone from from philosophy to Romania to France. We've been all over the world in this discussion, and I really appreciate her taking the time to talk with us today and to share her music with us. So we are listening to her Metal Storm for ensemble and computer sounds, and this is performed by her own and her husband's Hyperion International Ensemble.
Thank you.